Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I actually want to talk to you about why you should not learn only from success. So, this is part of my Nerd Out Wednesday series. I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And I was trying to think of a way to communicate selection bias or thinking about selection bias and how you can actually deal with that. And I think this is a really nice example to deal with selection biases in terms of learning only from success. So we often hear that one should learn from successful others or try to learn from your own successes. And the reason is that these particular individuals or your own particular successes, the things that you're doing good at, actually provide some sort of model on how to actually learn and improve and go forward, right? So you're learning from somebody else that was really successful. So you're just trying to get their best practices and just copy exactly what they're doing. The problem is that there is tremendous amounts of problems with this kind of learning or this kind of insights that you might gather. You're going to likely gather improper inferences when you do this kind of learning, when you're just focusing on something that is successful. And so let me give you an example. I'm going to go through multiple things like this. So one of the examples that I might use in my classroom is that you go, say you are thinking of becoming a lawyer, and you're sort of on the fence about whether you should actually become a lawyer, right? So what you do, somebody goes and tells you to go talk to some corporate lawyer. So you go and actually talk to corporate lawyers, the best ones in their entire field. And then what you're going to end up with one of two responses. One of them will be, yes, you should do that. That's the most amazingest thing that I've ever done. I'm very wealthy. And I apologize for that. I'm very, very wealthy. And you should do exactly what I did. And then the other response is, don't ever do that. This is a really bad mistake. It just took too much effort, and I don't really like what I'm doing. So what you're getting with these two responses is very biased responses because there are likely, 100 other people, even if not more, people that have tried to get to that exact same position and they couldn't get there for whatever reason they were there, right? So if the corporate lawyer is saying this is the best thing I've ever done, highly successful, well, there's probably 100 to 1,000 other people that tried that exact same thing and they failed, it didn't get there. So at that point, they have large amounts of student loan. Maybe they have, maybe they feel really bad about what they're doing. Maybe they're in a completely different career. Maybe they actually made it and became a lawyer and then chose to go in a different kind of practice that wasn't in the corporate law, and they're not really satisfied in that particular kind of area. So there's lots of different outcomes that you can get, and you should be looking at when you're drawing these particular inferences and you're talking to people that are successful. You should think about, this is called the survival bias, and you should be looking at and talking to people that are a broader population. So you, instead of actually talking to the senior level partners at a corporate law firm, for example, to decide what you're going to do next, well, you go and talk to all of the people that maybe are thinking of applying to going into law, or maybe they are lawyers of all sorts of different types. And then you might be able to get a better inference on what to do going forward, right? So you're getting a different population, you're getting a different sample to sample the population a little bit more effectively. And so you have to think about that, right? Or another thing that you could do is, downplay and sort of weight the inferences that they tell you, right? Or the insights that they tell you going forward. And you say, well, this person said this, but they are at the top of their game, so of course they're going to say that. Right. So a second thing that you have to worry about is often people might say that they were highly successful, or you look at them and you're like, wow, they're super successful. How did they actually get there? They have whatever it is. Maybe they have some large amount of fame. Maybe, these people that, I don't know, musicians or something like that, right? Or maybe they have a tremendous amount of wealth. Very, very wealthy individuals or billionaires. And you're looking at them and you're thinking, I would like to become like them. And you have to sort of look at how they actually got there, but then as well as how are you actually measuring that particular success? Because sometimes you give up a tremendous amount of other things when you only look at that one particular kind of outcome and you're not looking at the robust picture. Well, obviously there might be um, things associated with fame, right? It might be really stressful to become very famous, and there are a lot of negative things associated with that. Maybe you feel very isolated, for example. Um, in wealth, if you become extremely wealthy, well, then you have to sort of think about, how do they actually become very wealthy, and you have to measure different things like that to understand really what's going on. And either one of them are perfectly good outcomes to look at, but then you have to sort of look at much more of a holistic picture. And in strategy, what we think about companies in looking at this, because we often get trapped in thinking about, we should just think about financial performance of a particular company, but often that is not the best thing for a particular company. So what we recommend is for people to look and do a balanced scorecard approach. And this is just looking at multiple dimensions of performance to make a better insight in what's actually going on in a particular company. The third thing that you might want to look at and sort of think about in terms of learning only from success is a lot of times you might look at somebody and you think that they're highly successful, and then you think, but well, how do I actually get there? Why I'm not here? It's because they are at a different stage than you. So they might have started something. For example, they might be a very influential singer, or somebody along those lines, or a performer, and you're like, how come I can't get there? It's because they have been working on that particular thing for 10, 15 years, and they're at just fundamentally different stage than you. And that is okay to think about, but you have to sort of think about that going forward. So one particular thing that you could do to improve your own inferences and to move forward is to focus on just learning from your own successes, and maybe learning from your own failures and build up from there, right? So you be a little bit more self-focused and look at how you can actually improve your own performance rather than looking to see what other people are doing, right? That might actually improve you to get to another stage a little bit quicker. Now, a fourth thing that ends up happening when you only learn from success is that you end up getting competency traps. And so what is that? This is an idea that was popularized by Jim March, who is a very influential management thinker. And this idea is if you're doing something that's good, you have a tendency to only do that thing that you're good at. And so you end up becoming very isolated in the thing that you're good at. And when stuff changes, when the environment changes, then you necessarily can't actually respond to the environment because you're only doing that one good thing, and you could risk losing it all, right? So you become, I don't know, maybe you become very good at marketing in this specific area. So for example, you become good at Facebook ads or something like that. Well, then if something changes to Facebook, then all of those skills that you have created are no longer worthwhile, right? So what you should probably aim at is trying to become a little bit more holistic and growing a little bit more in multiple directions rather than just focusing on the thing that you're successful at. Now, the fifth thing that you might want to think about is when you only learn from success and you look at somebody else that is very successful, then you sort of have to weight this a little bit differently, because that successful outcome, how somebody actually became successful, often is the result of many things that we don't necessarily understand. So this is the whole point, and there's a very large management theory that we talk about in business school, and how companies actually become successful, or what causes a company become successful. And it's called the resource-based view. And basically what it suggests is that in order to become successful, we can't necessarily understand why something is successful. And the long story short, there's more stuff to it, but that's the basic premise behind it is that it's really complicated. There's a lot of moving factors, and it's often difficult. There's often, what's called path dependencies. It's often really difficult to sort of get to that moment that something is successful, and it's difficult to replicate that particular success. So that's all I wanted to talk about today, and this is a lesson. It really is thinking about selection biases, but I wanted to think about this in a different way. So, the first thing I pointed out with these particular selection biases, if you're only learning from something that's successful, well, then you're drawing from a biased sample, right? That sample is only a few people that have actually tried something that actually got to that particular stage. The second thing to think about is success can be very narrowly measured, and you should probably be trying to look at it more holistically to get a better picture of what's really going on behind the scenes. The third thing is to think about the particular stage that you're at of development and why you should sort of think about the stage of development and why it's important, how you're actually imitating success. The fourth thing is thinking about these particular competencies, the competency traps, right? You get good at something and that's the only thing you do. And when the environment changes, that's not necessarily good. And then finally is thinking about the fact that successful outcomes are there because they are difficult to replicate, and we can't necessarily understand how to actually get to those particular successful outcomes. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure you give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next videos. Bye.